बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद। I'll request Brother Ali to recite the verses from Holy Quran. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد.
Thank you, Brother Ali. Now I'll request Brother Nawaf for Marcia. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
सलावत बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद। मुजरे खल्क में इन आँखों ने क्या क्या मुजरे खल्क में इन आँखों ने क्या क्या देखा पर कहीं सिफ़े पैगंबर सा नाका देखा मुजरे खल्क में जुल्म मुजरे सज्जाद ने क्या क्या देखा जुल्म मुजरे सज्जाद ने क्या क्या देखा घर लुटा कैद हुए बाप का लाशा देखा मुजरे खल्क में कहती थी ज़ैनब मुस्तर के खुदा खैर करे कहती थी ज़ैनब मुस्तर के खुदा खैर करे रात को ख्वाब में उरियां सर ज़हरा देखा मुजरे खल्क में गिर पड़े सिफ्ते नबी थाम के हाथों से जिगर गिर पड़े सिफ्ते नबी थाम के हाथों से जिगर अली अकबर को जो रेती पे तड़पता देखा मुजरे खल्क में एक गठड़ी शहीदी पुश्त पे लाए उसमें एक गठड़ी शहीदी पुश्त पे लाए उसमें मैंने टुकड़े हुए कासिम का सरापा देखा मुजरे खल्क में इन आँखों ने क्या क्या देखा पर कहीं सिफ्ते पैगंबर सा नाका देखा सलावत बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद
नारे तकबीर, नारे रिसालत, नारे हैदरी। Now I request Brother Sayyid Jerry Haider Zaidi to come up and majlis. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
ठीक है फिर आखिर में शाता होगा मैंने कहा माता नहीं होगा या नहीं होगा मुझे बता 8:20 8:25 से खत्म कर दूंगा शुक्रिया अल्लाह मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद रहमल्लाहु मन क़रा अल-फातिहा أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الغر الميامين ولعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الإمام الصادق عليه الصلاة والسلام علمنا غابر مزبور صدق مولانا أبو عبد الله الصادق عليه الصلاة والسلام صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, before we start the majlis, we'll raise our hands and we'll ask by the wasila of Ali Muhammad alayhi salam that Ya Allah bihaqqi Fatimata wa abiha wa ba'liha wa baniha. Ya Allah, we all are here and of course we have so many supplications and hajat that we have regarding this world and regarding the hereafter. Ya Allah, please fulfill all of them. Ya Allah, our marhumin and our people that used to be with us, that used to sit in this majalises, that used to be part of these gatherings, they are not with us anymore. And one special personality that I would be requesting you all to remember in your prayers is one of the organizers in one of the Hussainiya in Toronto. He just died recently, just now today. So inshallah, keep him in your du'as too, that Ya Allah, please forgive all of the sins of all of the marhumin. And Ya Allah, of course we are waiting for the Imam of our time. Please hasten the dhuhur of Imam Sahibul Zaman. Salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Honestly, it's such a pleasure for me to be among you all. It's always a good drive. In summer, it's the best drive. You could see so much greenery on both sides. Alhamdulillah, I'm going to go back. There are so many people that are here that are always welcoming. And of course, I cannot thank them enough for all the services and all the muhabbat that they show towards me. In spite of this, inshallah, today we're going to talk about the personality. And of course, like some of the personalities are really prominent. Of course, when you would try to recognize yourself, one of the way that you can make yourself or you want to introduce yourself is how you would introduce yourself as someone who follows the madhab of Ali Muhammad or the madhab of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. You are a Muslim, of course, but when you want to introduce yourself, that's the one way of introducing. Second way of introducing yourself is what? You are a Shi'i. You are someone that has the wila of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and of course after Amir al-Mu'mineen, 11 of his descendants that are our masters. That's the second way of doing it. But when you come into the field of fiqh, what is the way that you would introduce yourself? People would follow Muhammad bin Idris al-Shafi'i, fiqh al-Shafi'i. People would follow Abu Hanifa Nu'man ibn Thabit al-Kufi. They call themselves as al-Hanaf, fiqh al-Hanfi. Then you have people like Malik ibn Anas al-Madani. People call what? Maliki. Then you have Hanabila, Hanbali, the Salafis, should I say, right? Ahmad bin Hanbal al-Shaybani. So mashallah, you have 4 of the people, and then you have Ahlul Hadith that don't follow anyone. So you have 5 group of people. In the old days, by the way, there were not only 4 fuqaha, there were not only 4 jurists. There were people like Awza'i, there were people like Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, there were people like A'mash. These were some of the big names around that time. Ishaq ibn Rahawai, someone like Hassan al-Basri, someone like Amr bin Ubaid al-Basri. These were big names around that time. But what happened was that these 4 were the most prominent, all of them. So now when you want to introduce and when you want to compare your fiqh, then you generally have these 4 people in front of you. But if a Shia wants to introduce himself, and if he wants to introduce himself not in terms of his aqidah, but he wants to introduce himself in terms of the fiqh, how would he introduce himself? I am the follower of Ja'far ibn Muhammad Al-Sadiq. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. So now, it becomes really important for us to reflect upon the personality, someone like him. And inshallah, if we have time, inshallah, in future years, we can a little bit look into the conditions that, and we can look into some of the students that he had around that time. But today, inshallah, I want to talk a little bit about his akhlaq. But when I want to talk a little bit about his etiquettes, about his akhlaq, I also want to give us a little bit of introduction about the merits and the virtues of Ahlul Bayt that came through his blessed mouth. It's important for us because when we want to have a good akhlaq, when we want to have a good conduct, sometimes we might not be really emphasizing on our conduct. Why? Because we think that we are coming from a really holy progeny. We are coming from really good lineage. So we're like, mashallah, Allah has always also given me the izzah. Why should I work upon my akhlaq? This concept doesn't come in an obvious way, but it resides somewhere within our hearts. That mashallah, I have these much resources, I have this much money, I have this much possession. Why do I need to have akhlaq? If I can achieve the victory of this world with the possession that I have, or with the lineage that I have, then why I do need to work on my akhlaq? That's a question that will come into minds of some of the people. Alhamdulillah, I'm sitting among the companies of the people that would not think like this. But generally, this is a concept that might come into the minds of some of the people. And this is where you need to reflect upon the akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And today I'm going to quote some of the riwayas of the akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt that is not quoted by the Shi'as, that is quoted by non-Shia sources, non-Shia narrator. Right? So first off, before I do so, I want to give a little bit of introduction of the way or the power or the majesty that Allah has given to the blessed Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. You know, whenever even I want to talk about akhlaq, I cannot talk about the akhlaq unless until I don't talk about their fadail. Important for us, right? We need to have a firm understanding that these are our masters. They are not like you and me. Allah has given them a special position, right? So I want to quote some of the riwayah. By the way, these riwayahs are quoted by Ibn Shahr al-Shub in his book Al-Manaqib. So inshallah, if anyone wants to go, they can look into it. Ibn Shahr al-Shub, he quotes these riwayahs, and one of the riwayahs says that Imam was sitting, and Imam wanted to talk the exclusive virtues that Allah has given to him and Ahlul Bayt in general. What did he say? Inna indi la sayfa rasulillah. I have that weapon, I have the sword of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sallam. Inni indi la ra'yati rasulillahi al-mighlaba. And I have the standard, I have the flag of the Prophet, the flag that gives victory. Mighlaba. No, mashallah, people, you know, mighlaba is on babe mif'al. Mif'al. If someone wants to study a little bit of Arabic, so when we want to open the door, what do we use? Key, right? When we want to open the door. What is key called in Arabic? Miftah. Something that you would use in order to open something. Miftah. Miftah is called what? Ismu ala. Mif'al. Babi mif'al. So what is Imam saying? The standard of the Prophet, the flag of the Prophet, which is the source of victory for everyone. So two things. Then Imam not only mentions the tabarrukat he had from the Prophet, he also talks about one more thing. Inna indi at-tasht alladhi kana yuqarribu bihal mu'sa al-qurban. That I also have that base and I also have that container that Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam would use whenever he wanted to slaughter an animal, whenever he wanted to sacrifice an animal in way of Allah. So, mashallah, you can imagine what is the distance between Imam and Prophet Musa. It's roughly around 3,000 years, more than 3,000 years. But Imam is saying that Allah has given that divine container, and that is a source of imamat of Ahlul Bayt. Inna indi al-isma alladhi إذا وضع رسول الله بين المسلمين والمشركين لم يصل المشركون إلى المسلمين نشابا. And I have that ism, I have the name of Allah, that when Prophet would use that name and he would be fighting against the polytheists, the power of that name would be so strong that the polytheists would not even come on to the Muslims even the length of an arrow. So see, Imam wanted to tell about his fada'il. Then Imam said, Inna indi alladhi ja'at bihi al-malaika. And I have the example of what the angels have brought forward to us as wa سلاح عندنا كمثل التابوت عند بني إسرائيل. And the example of us that we have the weapon of the Prophet, it is as if like the way in the old days Banu Israel would have the coffin with them. So Banu Israel in the old days, whenever a tragedy would befall on them, they would use that coffin, they would use the tabut in order to absolve themselves from the hardship. Likewise, Imam is saying, if anyone would claim imamah, see with them if they have that divine weapon of the Prophet or not. So you see my point? That's one of the hadiths. What is the second hadith that Imam mentioned his merits? Imam says, Al-Wahu Musa indana, wa asa Musa indana, wa nahnu warathatun nabiyyin. That the tablet, the holy tablet that came in, the Torah that came in, the Torah was not given to us, was not divinely revealed onto the heart of Musa. It was a tablet that Allah descended from the skies and it came to Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. So those tablets in which Torah was written, Mawla is saying what? I have those tablets too. I have the asa of the Musa, the stick of the Musa that when Musa would use in order to do all those miracles that he used to do. And we are the successor, we are the recipients of the Prophet. The third riwayah, inshallah, with this I want to go towards the fadila part, towards the akhlaq part. What does Imam say? Imam says, ilmuna ghabirun mazbur. That when we, Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, when we talk about our knowledge, when you talk about Ahmad bin Hanbal, he would say, my ijtihad says this and things, this and this, and Allah knows the best. Wallahu a'lamu bis-sawab. Allah knows what is the right decision, but my ijtihad has led me to this decision. But when Imam would talk, Imam would never say that my ijtihad has led me to say this. Because when Imam talks about something, he talks it not in terms of the knowledge, not in terms of the deduction. He talks about the things the way they are. Al-ilmul waqi'i. You get my point? So what does Imam say? Ilmuna ghabirun mazbur. We, the people of Ahlul Bayt, our knowledge concerns the knowledge of the unseen that happened in the past. Our knowledge is also concerns the thing that will happen in the future. وَنَقْتٌ فِي الْقُلُوبِ وَنَقْرٌ فِي الْأَسْمَاعِ. You want to understand our knowledge? The knowledge, the source of the knowledge that we have, it's a divine inspiration that comes right into our heart. It's a message that we hear from the angels. So whenever the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt would come in front of you, it would either be a divine inspiration from Allah Almighty that Allah would directly put into their hearts, or there will be an angel from Allah Almighty that will relay the message of Allah towards Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So you understand the capacity. And now Mawla just didn't stop there. Mawla said, Inna indina al-Jafr al-Abyaz, Inna indana al-Jafr al-Ahmar, wa inna indana Mushaf Fatima. Jafar, ilm Jafar, probably the people here, they might have heard about it. But when we say Jafar of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, Jafar means what? Container. In old days, when they want to fetch something, when they want to put something, they would put it into a container. That container is called what? Jafar. It was made up of leather. So that thing is called Jafar. Al-Jafar al-Abyaz. I have the white container and I have the red container. Inshallah, one day we have time, we'll talk about Jafar al-Abyaz, we'll talk about Jafar al-Ahmar, and we would also talk about Mushaf of Fatima. The divine book that Sayyidah Fatima salamullah alayha had. The riwayah says in Al-Kafi, I would just quote one portion of it. Imam Sadiq said that as soon as Prophet died, Jibreel used to descend from the skies all the way to Sayyidah Zahra and would have conversation with Sayyidah Zahra about the events that will happen in the future. And when Mawla, Amir al-Mu'mineen, would listen to it, Amir al-Mu'mineen would write down each and everything that Jibreel would quote to Sayyidah Zahra. And whatever book Mawla combined by writing the conversation that took place between Jibreel and Sayyidah Zahra, that book is called what? Mushaf Fatima. So Mawla wants to tell, we are not the people that will rely on to others in order to deduct our ruling. Our rulings are divine. وَإِنَّا عِنْدَنَا الْجَامِعَةِ. And surely we have another book that's called what? Jami'ah. فيها جميع ما يحتاج إليها الناس. And it contains all the knowledge that anyone in this world would ever need till day of judgment. So we understand the capacity, we understand the knowledge of the Imams. The knowledge of the Imam has divine source. It's a source that is written in Al-Jami'ah. It's a source that is written in Kitab Ali. It's a source that they have written in Musaf Fatima. And those are the containers which contains the belongings of the old prophet. When you hear that Imams had Asa of Musa, when you hear that Imam had these and these miracles, these and these signs of the previous prophets, where they would use to keep all of them, they would keep them in that white and red container that had. Inshallah, one day, the scholars have written a whole book on this topic, Musaf Fatima, Al-Jafr al-Ahmar, Al-Jafr al-Abyad, Al-Jami'ah. So how can I just tell you in 5 minutes all the details, right? But sufficient for us to understand is that the knowledge of the Imam is unprecedented. It is not something that you and me have. We have knowledge which is limited. Imams have knowledge that Allah has given them. They have the knowledge of the past, they have the knowledge of the present, and then they will have the knowledge of the future. So they have knowledge of everything. And here, when I'm trying to discuss about their knowledge, I would also try to discuss about the akhlaq of the Imam. You know, Imam being from the lineage of the Prophet, Farzande Rasul, as we say in Urdu. Imam being someone who is divinely appointed. Imam being someone who has so much knowledge. Imam being someone who was never for one day dependent upon the others. If you think about someone like this, and if you think in this present world, someone who has so much authority, what would the next thing would come into your mind? That if I would try to go and meet him, if I would try to go and have a conversation with him, probably he or she will never entertain me. Why? Because he's a famous person. And why do we have to go and talk about the prime ministers, and why do we have to talk about the presidents? You can just go and randomly search a guy that has 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. He will not even give you the reply of the message that you'll be sending, and that message would not be to request something. It would only be a token that will show how much you have love and respect for that personality, but that personality would not respond you back. Why? Because he is thinking about himself as someone untouchable. He's thinking about of himself as someone who has so much authority because he has 100,000 subscribers, because he has 1 million subscribers, because he has 10 million subscribers. So when this idea ever comes into your mind, think about Imam, who was given all the knowledge, who was given all the authority. Even then his akhlaq was unprecedented. One of the example that I want to quote. See the example, the way Imam would deal with his subordinates. Imam had a slave, right? In old days, they would have slaves, right? But see the way Imam would treat those slaves. The riwayah is from one of the narrator. His name goes as Ja'far bin Abi Aisha. He says that Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam dispatched one of his slaves in order to do a certain work. فَأَبَتَعَ عَنْهُ. So that slave, instead of fulfilling the order that Imam gave, he basically got late and he basically didn't do the work that Imam wanted him to do. فَخَرَجَ فِي إِثْرِهِ. Then Imam alayhi salatu wasalam came and he wanted to follow where exactly the slave went. فَوَجَدَهُ نَائِمًا. When Imam went and when Imam actually saw his slave, he saw him sleeping. Imagine if I am the manager. Think about me as a manager and my subordinate. I gave him such an important work to work on a file, and when I came on his desk, I see him sleeping. What would be my next reaction? Fire him, of course. I probably would think about firing, but yes, natural reaction, fire him. What are you doing? It's a time to work. It's not time for you to sleep. Or at least I'll give him a warning. Or if I want to talk in my own language, probably 1 or 2 bad words would also come. Follow, I was trying to give you the thing, well, mashallah. You know, mashallah is Pakistani way of saying or criticizing someone. Mashallah, mashallah. No, you understand what I mean? So here. What did Imam say? فَجَلَسَ عِنْدَ رَأْسِهِ. Imam didn't just criticize him. Imam sat next to where he was sleeping. فَيُرَوِّحُهُ. And instead of criticizing, Imam was gently pelting him 1 time, 2 times, like doing it like slowly like this. जैसे हम लोग बच्चे को उठाते हैं, उठ जा मेरे बच्चे, उठ जा. Like I have a son now, inshallah. I try to like wake him up, so I just don't wake him like this. Try to pelt him sometime, and then he wakes up. That's the way Imam was treating him. The riwayah says, فَلَمَّا انتبه. So as soon as he wake up, he saw Imam next to him. Then Imam says, يَا أَيُّهَا الرَّجُلُ وَاللَّهِ مَا ذَلِكَ لَكَ تَنَامُ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارِ. Then what is this, my servant? You're trying to sleep both at the time of the day and night time? لَكَ أَن تَنَامَ اللَّيْلِ وَلَنَا مِنْكَ النَّهَارِ. Your duty is to sleep at night and do whatever you want to during the daytime. Your job is to serve Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. So see, Imam just didn't criticize him. Imam was really respectful the way he dealt. One riwayah, second riwayah about the akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt, but before that, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Second riwayah is from Malik ibn Anas. Malik ibn Anas al-Madini. Same Malik ibn Anas that the people that follow Fiqh al-Maliki, they follow Malik ibn Anas. Same Malik ibn Anas who has written a book which is called Al-Muwatta. The Pakistani sometimes says Al-Mawta. It's Al-Muwatta. Muwatta is a better way to say it. Likewise, he has a whole book which is called Al-Mudawwanatul Kubra, which contains the ruling that he has given. Likewise, he has other books too. He was one of the most prominent scholars at the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. So someone who was contemporary, someone who had discussions with Imam, someone who didn't believe in the message of Ahlul Bayt. That's why. Why would you follow someone else? Why would you have your own fiqh when Imam was there? You get my point? So someone who doesn't belong to us. By the way, this riwayah is quoted by Sheikh Tusi in his book Al-Amali. Inshallah, one day we have time, we can talk about a little bit of Amaliyat. Sayyid Murtada has written one Al-Amali. Sheikh Sadiq has written one Al-Amali. Sayyid Murtada has written Al-Amali. And likewise, Sheikh Tusi has written Al-Amali. Al-Amali means that you would sit in a majlis. Whatever your teacher would quote the riwayah, you will just write it down without going into the details, without going into the topic that he's talking. You're just writing it down, whatever he says. But there is a good message. It tells you the details the scholars used to have around the time. So one of the amaliyat that we have is the al-amali of Sheikh Tusi. Sheikh Tusi says that it's quoted by Malik ibn Anas. He quotes it from Malik ibn Anas, and Malik ibn Anas is telling his observation regarding Imam Sadiq. I want all of you to focus what he says. Today I was being told you have enough time. You can speak as much as you can because the time of the Maghrib is around 8:40, 54ish, right? I'll finish right at 8:53, 59 seconds. Is that okay? Just joking. Inshallah, I'm going to finish around the time that I'm given. But inshallah, I want all of you to focus on this thing. I'm not going to take a lot of time. We have to go to the Musibah part 2. See someone, a non-Shia, talking about the Imam. By the way, this is same Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. That's a topic for another day. Probably the people that are listening to me, they would criticize me after my majlis that whenever you want to discuss a topic, you say you want to discuss in the next majlis, in the next majlis. No. These topics require a lot of details. But Imam Sadiq was not respected by the Sunnis the way Shias respect them. Go to the book of Dhahbi, Shamsuddin Dhahbi. He has a whole book which is called what? Mizanul I'tidal. Mizanul I'tidal is a whole book on Rijal that he has written on the weak narrators, on the Du'afa, on some of them that are not trustworthy. And within it, he has included Imam Sadiq too. Imagine someone who was Sadiq, but he is deemed as weak. Bukhari, in spite he was living around the time, not around the time, but he was someone that could have quoted from Imam Sadiq. He never even narrated one hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. And Ibn Taymiyyah used to write that Bukhari used to deem Imam Sadiq as a weak narrator. Imagine someone like as Imam Sadiq being a weak narrator. So when I'm quoting Malik ibn Anas, you need to understand I'm quoting the personality from a school of a thought that didn't have much respect for Imam Sadiq. And not only the Yahya bin Sa'id al-Qattan, Sufyan al-Thawri, these were some of the people that criticized Imam Sadiq. And they used to deem him weak when it came to narrating the hadith. But inshallah, that's a topic for another day, and we can refute them in another majlis. But sufficient for us to understand that these are the people that didn't have much respect for Ahlul Bayt. So this is Malik ibn Anas. Malik ibn Anas said what? Malik ibn Anas says, وَكَانَ رَجُلًا لَا يَخْلُو مِنْ أَحَدِ ثَلَاثِ خِصَالٍ. That when I met Imam Sadiq, I always used to see him consistently in one of the three states. إِمَّا صَائِمًا إِمَّا قَائِمًا وَإِمَّا ذَاكِرًا. What I would see him that he would be fasting, or if he is not fasting, he would be worshipping Allah Almighty. And if he is not worshipping Allah Almighty, he would be remembering Allah Almighty. Tasbih Jumper, like the way we recite the tasbih. And then someone like Malik ibn Anas says, وَكَانَ مِنْ عُظَمَاءِ الْعِبَادِ وَأَكَابِرِ الزُّهَادِ الَّذِينَ يَخْشَوْنَ اللَّهَ. That Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam was being described as someone who was one of the most distinguishable and one of the most noteworthy person that had God-fearness within him, that used to abstain from the base desires of this world, who was someone that used to be among the top worshippers of this ummah. And then he narrates one of the incident. He says, وَإِذَا قَالَ قَالَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ إِصْفَرَّ وَجْهُهُ مَرَّةً وَإِخْضَرَّ وَجْهُهُ مَرَّةً أُخْرَى. Allah. That sometimes when he would say, the Prophet has said, like it's so easy for me to say. I just came here, I recited a nikah, and it was so easy for me to say. قَالَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ النِّكَاحُ مِن سُنَّتِي فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ. So easy. My expressions didn't change. I was completely fine when I was quoting the Prophet. But Malik ibn Anas said that whenever Imam Sadiq would say the Prophet used to say this and this, the face of the Imam would sometime would turn yellow and would sometime would turn green. Allah. Could you imagine? When would your face would turn yellow? If you're going through a real fear, if you are intimidated by something, if you feel fearful, the color of your face would change to yellow, isn't it? Imam, when he would quote the Prophet, his face would change because of the respect that he had for Hijjat, for his grandfather, for Imam, or Imamul Anbiya, for the Prophet. And then the riwayah says, وَلَقَدْ حَجَجْتُ مَعَهُ سَنَةً. And yes, there was 1 year that I went with him to Hajj. And mashallah, the people that are going to Hajj, Hajj is not the easiest of ibadah. When you go to Hajj, you would do Umrah Tamattu', and then you would do Hajjul Tamattu'. The Hajjul Ifrad and Hajjul Iqran are for the people that are living within the 80 to 90 kilometers of Makkah boundary. But for someone like us that are going from other nations, all of us, we have to do Hajj of Tamattu'. This is the same of Hajj of Tamattu' that Umar ibn al-Khattab banned when he says, مُتْعَتَانِ كانتا محلتان على عهد رسول الله وإني أحرمهما وأعاقب عليهما. That there were two mut'ah. Mut'atul nisa, like the temporary marriage, and mut'atul hajj, hajj tamattu'. They were permissible during the time of the Prophet. But I am the one, see the audacity of this person. I am the one that would ban all those two mut'ah. And I would definitely punish those people that are doing that. Do you get my point? That's why we don't follow the people of Saqifa. Clearly. Why? Because we only believe that it was only the Prophet or the infallibles after the Prophet that preserved the Sharia, that came with the Sharia. Anyone who is not infallible or anyone who is not a Prophet, he doesn't have any guarantee or he doesn't have any possession of power that he could make changes within the Sharia of Islam. Just coming back to the topic. He said, one time I went with Imam Sadiq to Hajj. And when you go to Hajj, the first thing that you need to do is put on your ihram, make a niyyah, and then you say what? Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Labbaik la sharika laka labbaik. Inna al-hamda wa ni'ma laka wal mulk la sharika laka labbaik. This is the whole talbiha that you have to recite. Are we sure? Talbiha means that when you are saying, Oh Allah, I am there to you to worship you. Oh Allah, I am in your boundaries so that you can give me those favors. Did you follow my point? So the riwayah says that when we reach miqat, so there are 5 miqat. Sorry, I'm not here to tell you whole fiqh of Hajj. That's a separate topic again. But there are 5 miqat. Yalamlam people for the Yemen, Qarnul Manazil for the people that are coming from Ta'if. Then you have Wadi al-Aqiq for the people that are coming from Iraq. Then you have Juhfa for people like us that want to go from Jeddah. And then you have Masjid al-Shajara, right? Maqam Dhul Halifa, which is close to Medina. People are coming from Medina. And there are some other miqat too. That's another discussion. But when we reach one of the miqat, people started saying talbiha. Why? Because you have to say talbiha. Now there are 25 things which is haram on you. You cannot do those things. That's a topic for a fiqh, inshallah. But Malik ibn Anas quoted his observation. He said that when I reached there, people were saying their talbiha. And when I see Imam Sadiq, he was sitting on his horse. And instead of saying talbiha, whenever he wanted to say talbiha, inqata'a sawtuhu fi halqihi. وَكَادَ أَن يَخِرَّ مِنْ رَاحِلَتِهِ. That whenever he wanted to say talbiha, the voice would crack, would disintegrate into his soul. And he was not able to say talbiha. And he was about to fall from his horse that he was sitting at. Then someone like Malik ibn Anas came in. He used to deem himself as faqih. He says, Yabna Rasulillah, la budda laka an taqul. Oh, the son of the Prophet, it is obligatory, it is mandatory for you to say this talbiha, because if you would not say this talbiha, you would not be able to cross this. See the reply of Imam. Imam says, Yabna Abi Amir, كيف لي أن أجسر أن أقول لبيك اللهم لبيك ويجيب ربي لا لبيك ولا سعديك. That, oh Ibn Abi Amir, oh Malik ibn Anas, do you think that I could say labbaik Allahumma labbaik when I fear if I would say this, Allah would reply, oh, you the person, you are not welcome and you will not be granted the benefits. See, who's saying? Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. Can we even for 1 second think that he being a divine person, he being an infallible, he possibly would think that his hajj would not be accepted? No. But there are some maratib. It's like Prophet asking for forgiveness. Do we think that Prophet have sinned? No, of course, because we have this concept of the isma. When we read the du'as that talks about the forgiveness, Allahumma gfir li al-dhunub allati tahtiku al-isam, Allahumma gfir li al-dhunub allati tughayyir al-ni'am. We don't mean to say that Mawla committed these sins. That's a message for the Shias of Ahlul Bayt, that be mindful that when you go to these miqats, imagine that you've been standing in front of Allah, and when you say labbaik, you should mean it, because that should not be the way that you would say labbaik and Allah would reply you, there is no welcoming to you, and you will not be given any benefit. See the akhlaq of Imam. Someone who used to remember Allah every time. Someone who had extreme love when it comes to worshipping Allah Almighty. And when we are talking about this concept of labbaik, we have a hadith. It's important. Some of you, or you would know some of them, that would be going for Hajj. The riwayah says from the Masum, إِذَا اكتسب رجل مالا من غير حله ثم حج فلبى. That if someone earns some money in unlawful way, in a haram way, and then he goes for Hajj, and then he says talbiha, labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Nudiya la labbaika wa la sa'adaik. Oh, the person or the servant that you come in, you are not welcome. Allah would not welcome those that would go for Hajj when they would use unlawful means in order to achieve that ibadah. And that I think would apply to all of us. If we are worshiping, if we are praying, if we are fasting, if you're doing all these kind of things, and if we have used unlawful means in order to achieve that, then there's a problem there. So do you see my point? One last hadith that I want to quote, inshallah. With this I would connect myself with the musibah. This concept of labbaik wa sa'adaik. It's a Hajj season. These are called Ashharul Hajj, which means the months of Hajj. You could do Umrah Tamattu in Shawwal, in the Qa'dah, and Dhul Hajj. 3 months you can do the Tamattu, the Umrah of Tamattu. So I want to talk about this concept of labbaik wa sa'adaik. We all know labbaik means when you want to say that, Ya Allah, I'm there to worship you. And when Allah says labbaik wa sa'adaik, it means Allah has accepted our worship and Allah is going to give the favor. Now, I want all of you to focus here, all of my brothers and sisters. This hadith is important. The riwayah says that one time Prophet and Amir al-Mu'mineen were sitting together, and Prophet said these lines, Ala ubashiruka ya Ali, O Ali, shouldn't I give you glad tidings? See the reply of Mawla. Mawla says, Ya Rasulullah, bi abi anta wa ummi, my mother and father be sacrificed on you, be ransom on you. Ya Rasulullah, lam tazal mubashiran bi kulli khair. You have always been a giver of all the good news that have ever come to us. See the akhlaq of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When Prophet and Amir al-Mu'mineen were done with this discussion, then Prophet says, Ja'ani Jibrailu wa akhbarani al-khabara anifa. فَأَعْجَبَ that Jibreel just came from the skies and he gave me this news. And when he gave me this news, it was really prolific, was really good to listen what he was saying. Then then Amir al-Mu'mineen says, مَا الَّذِي أَخْبَرَكَ جِبْرَائِيل. Oh, the Prophet, what has Jibreel informed you? Now imagine, now inshallah, listen what Prophet said. Prophet says, أخبرني جبرائيل إذا رجلا من أمتي يصلي علي وأتبع بالصلاة علي أهل بيتي فتحت له أبواب السماء. That when a person from my nation, from my ummah, would send salawat on me, would send blessing on me, and if he would include my holy progeny, my holy family in it, the skies would open its door for that believer. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. وأنه حطا للذنوب كما تحاتت الورق من الشجرة, and it is a source that will remove the sins. And when you have seen the falls, right? When you would see the falls, one day you would look, the whole tree is filled with the leaves, and the next day you would come in and you would see no leaves on it. What does Mawla say? What does the Prophet say? The Prophet said that Jibreel informed that it is a source that will forgive your sins, and the sins will be forgiven so quickly. The way in the weather of the fall, the leaves would leave the tree. And at that moment, I want all of you to focus. At that moment, the angels وَصَلَّتْ عَلَيْهِ الْمَلَائِكَةُ سَبْعُونَ صَلَاةً, and the angels would open 70 doors of the mercy. وَقَالَ اللَّهُ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى يَا مَلَائِكَتِي تُصَلُّونَ عَلَىٰ عَبْدِي سَبْعُونَ صَلَاةً وَإِنِّي أُصَلِّي عَلَيْهِ 700 صَلَاةً وَلَبَّيْكَ وَسَعْدَيْكَ عَبْدِي. That, oh my angels, Allah would say, oh my angels, you have opened 70 doors of mercy for the person who sent blessing onto the Prophet and his family. I will open 700 doors of mercy for that servant that would send salawat on the Prophet and his family. And I would say to that person, labbaika wa sa'daik, oh my person, you are welcome. And all the acts of your worship would be welcome, would be accepted. Why? Because you have sent salawat on to the Prophet and his family. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So inshallah, next time today, There is no greater reward, my brothers and sisters, than sending salawat onto the Prophet and his family. I'm saying it not as a guaranteed thing, but I have heard a lot of people, a lot of scholars, and a lot of riwayats that talks about how important it is to remember the Prophet. You see, like inshallah, one day if we can talk about it, about Imam Sajjad, the way he has sent salawat in the month of Sha'ban. Have you read about the salawat al-Sha'baniyah? See, number of times he has said, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And then he mentions the fadail of the Prophet and his family, right? Important for us. When, even with the du'as, when we are trying to ask for the du'as, start with sending salawat onto the family of the Prophet. Then in the center, make sure that you send salawat. Then at the end, you send salawat. I'm pretty sure if we do this way, Allah would be really merciful on us, inshallah. One last riwayah that I want to quote and relate it to the musibah part. Sufyan al-Thawri one time came in to see Imam. The color of the face of the Imam was completely changed. Whenever something, a tragedy would befell on us, you could see the expression of our face would change completely. So likewise, Sufyan al-Thawri came in and he says, وَرَآهُ مُتَغَيَّرَ اللَّوْنِ. The color of the face of the Imam was completely changed. He said, Mawla. Mawla is my way, of course. He would not say Mawla, but that's my way of explaining. Mawla, what just happened right now? Mawla said, Imam said, Inni nahaytu an yas'adu fawqa al-bayt. I have asked the people that are working in the house, the slaves, and I have asked my family members, don't go onto the roof of the house. And there was one of the slave girls that used to take care of my baby. She was right there onto the top of the roof. فَلَمَّا بَصُرَتْ بِي. As soon as she saw me, ارتعدت وتحيرت وسقط الصبي من عندها إلى الأرض فمات. That as soon as she saw me, she got really fearful. She was completely confused. And the baby she was holding, baby of the Imam, she was holding, it fell and it came right onto the ground. Ya Sufyan, فما تغير لوني لموت الصبي إنما تغير لوني لما أدخلت رعب في قلبها. Allah. Oh Sufyan, the color that you see of my face is not changed because my baby is perished, because my baby has died. It is because the fear that came in, because when she looked at me, the fear that came into her heart, that thing has changed my color. Imam never wanted to make anyone fearful. Like we have. This is the personality. As soon as someone would see, they will be really fearful because this and this person is coming. And sometimes we Maulanas, when we come in, we try to instill fear into the hearts of the believers. Believers don't even want to come near to us because they are so fearful that what would we say, what would happen. See, this is not a positive attitude. Imam says, no, my color has not changed because my son has died. It has changed because the fear came into the heart of the slave girl. And when the slave girl came in, Mawla says, Anti hurratun liwajhillah la ba'si alayki marratayn. Mawla said her 2 times that you are free in the way of Allah and there is no harm onto you. He just didn't say it 1 time, he said it twice. Don't worry about it. It happened, it happened. You know, I'm a father of someone too. Not easy. If anyone would do the smallest thing to my baby, I might have the best of akhlaq with him. But I would feel really resentful. I would probably try to hurt him. But when I was reflecting upon this hadith, when I was reflecting upon this rawaya, I was thinking that Mawla, you said whatever you said around that time. And of course, when things would have settled down, when that slave girl would have left the place, you would have seen your small baby dying in front of you. My heart goes to Karbala, when Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam had that 6-month-old baby with him. 6-month-old baby. Some people call him Aliyun al-Asghar. Some people call him Abdullah Radhir. It doesn't, it's not a problem whatever thing you call him. But when 6-month-old baby came in, then Imam requested, oh people, he is thirsty for 3 days, and his mother is unable to feed him. Is it possible that you can feed him with some drops of water as soon as Imam expels 6-month-old baby? There were people standing near the Imam. They were not the force of Imam Hussein. They were the enemies of Hussein. But when they saw that baby with that face, they started crying on. And at that moment, the people are having their and make sure that you remove the princess from them. You have slaughtered the horses and the same was used as pointed to Hussein. But Ali Yes, good, he gathered everyone. Humayda is the mother of Imam, who is the wife of Imam. And when she was closing the fire, she started to cry and weep, Lord. And even when Asiyah was sitting with her, he started crying when he wanted like that. And my heart says, Sayyidah Humayda, may Allah have mercy over you. And when you were sitting, Imam was surrounded by the flame. But let's go back to Karbala. And let's go to the Karbala. And when he was onto the ground, she was onto the chest of Abdullah. And there were one of the fear, looking for don't kill my brother. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he was like to be martyred 7 times and the last time he was given a poison to drink. But one of them said Shaykh has quoted that Abu Ja'far he dispatched an army in order to burn the house of Al-Mahdi. The whole house burned, the khutbah says, and then when the house burned, Imam Sadiq started to cry profusely. I waited and I said to my mom, why were you crying? You were crying because you was the house. Was the reason Mawla reply? Oh my God, can I serve? I was crying because I lost the house. I was looking children. I was looking men of my house. How they were running when the house was into the fire. And my house was Karbala. That how my eyes on and how Zainab would have gone from one tent to another, from second to the third, and the tents were being burned. We say to our Imam of our time, Azam Allahu Ajrak, Imam Sadiq was
leaving this world. And within one of these days, he was leaving the world. And we say, and we cry here, and we say it out loud. Wa Imama, wa Ja'fara, wa Sadiqa. Imam has said for Imam Qadib. He said that, oh my son, when I am martyred, you are responsible for my ghusl, and you are responsible for my burial, and you are also responsible to make sure that people will cry over me for 7 years in Mina. Within these days, Imam left us, but I would say sincerely, with both of my hands intact, oh Mawla, when you were leaving, you were sure that Imam Qadib would take care of your body, he would take care of your burial. But let's go back to Karbala. When Sayyid al-Shuhada was martyred, his body was left to the plains of Karbala, and then the horses and then they trampled.
سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We ask Allah Almighty that, Ya Allah, whatever the smallest act of worship we just did, Ya Allah, please accept. Ya Allah, inshallah, one hajat that we have, and the most important hajat that we all should have in our mind, that Ya Allah, when we leave this world, we leave it with the righteous iman, and following the path of Ahlul Bayt, and having the animosity of the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, Ya Allah. And Ya Allah, one last dua is that, Ya Allah, please hasten the zuhur of Imam Sahib al-Zaman and make us among his companions and among his supporters. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.